Before the first heartbeat of creation, before the first flicker of starlight cut through the void, a single voice spoke, and the universe answered. From that first moment when nothing became everything, to the final vision of a restored world where tears are obsolete, this is the sweeping epic that has captivated billions. It's a story spanning millennia, revealing a relentless plan to rescue humanity from itself. You'll walk alongside rebels and prophets, witness seas splitting and walls crumbling, and see how ancient promises find their yes in a dusty carpenter from Nazareth. The greatest rescue mission ever launched began in a garden and ended on a hill. In the beginning, there was only silence. No galaxies, no wind, no life, just the vast, cold theater of emptiness. Then, something unthinkable occurred. Genesis opens with a declaration. God breathed the heavens into being. The earth was a formless wasteland, shrouded in darkness, until a wind from God swept over the waters. And with a command, "Let there be light," the darkness shattered. For 6 cycles of morning and night, God spoke reality into existence. First, the boundary of the sky. Then, dry land rising from the deep, followed by every shade of green bursting from the soil. The sun, moon, and stars took their cosmic positions. Oceans filled with leviathans, and the air with eagles. Each day, the Creator surveyed the work and called it good. But the 6th day held a different weight entirely. Why would the architect of infinite galaxies pause to sculpt mud? Genesis reveals the answer. God formed a man from the dust, but the magic wasn't in the clay. It was in the breath. Leaning close, God exhaled his own life into the man's nostrils, and Adam became a living soul, different from every other creature, because he carried the divine spark. God didn't drop Adam into a survival scenario. He planted a garden sanctuary called Eden, a paradise of provision. Adam had the run of the estate, but God noticed a flaw. It is not good for the man to be alone. So, after a deep sleep and a surgical act of creation, God presented Eve. Adam, waking from his slumber, saw her, and poetry spilled from his lips. Life was a perfect harmony. But a single restriction hung in the air. Do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a test of trust. The serpent slithered onto the scene, not with fangs, but with a question. Did God actually say? He twisted the words, planting a seed of doubt. He promised that eating the fruit wouldn't bring death, but enlightenment, that they would become like gods. Eve saw the fruit was pleasing, and Adam, standing silently by, took it from her hand. Innocence is lost the moment we believe the lie that we know better than our Maker. In that single bite, shame flooded in. For the first time, they hid. When God walked through the garden, the call wasn't, "Where are you?" because he didn't know. It was an invitation to confess. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the snake. The result was catastrophic. Pain, toil, and the introduction of death into the system. Yet, even in the sentencing, mercy appeared. God made them garments of skin, covering their shame, and whispered a prophecy that one day a descendant would crush the serpent's head. Outside the gates of Eden, the world grew dark quickly. Adam and Eve's first son, Cain, was a farmer. Abel, a shepherd. When they brought offerings to God, Abel's sacrifice of the firstborn lamb was accepted, but Cain's grain was rejected. Jealousy crouched at Cain's door like a predator. God warned him to master it, but Cain lured Abel into the field and committed the first murder. When God asked where Abel was, Cain famously retorted, "Am I my brother's keeper?" The ground drank Abel's blood, and Cain became a restless wanderer, marked by God for protection, but exiled from his family. As the generations rolled on, Humanity's lifespan stretched to nearly a millennium, but so did their wickedness. What happens when the human heart is left to its own devices without restraint? Genesis records that every thought of man was only evil, all the time. It broke the Creator's heart. He decided to wash the slate clean. But one man, Noah, found favor. He was a righteous anomaly in a sea of violence. God gave him a blueprint for an ark, a vessel 450 feet long, and told him to fill it with pairs of every creature. For decades, Noah built while the world mocked. Then the springs of the great deep burst forth. Rain fell for 40 days and nights. The floodwaters rose above the highest mountains, erasing every living thing that breathed air. Only Noah, his family, and the cargo of animals survived that floating zoo. When the waters receded and the ark rested on Mount Ararat, Noah stepped onto a silent, cleansed earth. He built an altar, and God made a covenant sealed by a rainbow. Never again would a flood destroy all life. But humanity's heart hadn't changed. They gathered on the plain of Shinar with a unified language and a prideful ambition. Let us build a tower that reaches the heavens. They wanted to make a name for themselves. God saw that if they succeeded, nothing would be impossible for their arrogance. So he scrambled their language. Suddenly, the bricklayer couldn't understand the foreman. The project collapsed. They scattered across the globe, forming the nations. This set the stage for the most audacious promise in history. In the city of Ur, a man named Abram received a cosmic call. God said, "Leave your country, your people, and go to a land I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless those who bless you, and through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Abram was 75 years old. He packed his bags. The only problem? He had no children. He and his wife Sarai were old and barren. When Abram complained that a servant would be his heir, God took him outside and said, "Look at the stars. If you can count them, that's how many descendants you'll have." Abram believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. But time dragged on. Sarai, losing patience, offered her servant Hagar to Abram. Ishmael was born, a son, but not the son of the promise. 13 years later, when Abram was 99, God appeared again. He changed his name to Abraham, father of many, and Sarah to Sarah. He promised that Sarah, at 90 years old, would have a baby within the year. Sarah laughed at the absurdity, but God replied, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Sure enough, Isaac, the child of laughter, was born. Then came the ultimate test. God said, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and sacrifice him." Abraham rose early the next morning. No arguing, no stalling. He placed the wood on Isaac's back and walked toward Mount Moriah. As Abraham raised the knife, an angel screamed, "Stop!" Abraham saw a ram caught in the thicket. He had proved that. His faith wasn't just lip service. Isaac grew up and married Rebekah. She was barren, but Isaac prayed, and she conceived twins who fought in the womb. God told her, "Two nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger." Esau emerged first, red and hairy. Jacob followed, clutching his heel. How do you value a birthright when you're starving? Esau came in from the field, famished. Jacob was cooking red stew. Esau said, "Give me some of that red stuff." Jacob held the bowl back. "Sell me your birthright first." Esau shrugged. "I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me?" He swore an oath and ate the stew, despising his spiritual inheritance. Later, with Rebekah's help, Jacob disguised himself with goatskins to fool the blind Isaac and stole the blessing meant for Esau. Fearing for his life, Jacob fled. On the run, Jacob had a dream of a ladder stretching to heaven. God reaffirmed the Abrahamic promise to him. 20 years later, Jacob returned home, wrestled with an angel all night, and had his name changed to Israel. He loved his son Joseph more than the others, giving him an ornate robe. Joseph had dreams where his brothers bowed to him. The brothers hated him. They plotted to kill him, but Reuben intervened. Instead, they sold Joseph into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar. God blessed him, but Potiphar's wife falsely accused him, and Joseph ended up in prison. Yet, God was with him. Joseph interpreted dreams for Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. 2 years later, Pharaoh had disturbing dreams about fat cows and thin cows. Joseph was summoned. He explained that 7 years of plenty were coming, followed by 7 years of devastating famine. He advised storing grain. Pharaoh made Joseph the vizier of Egypt, second only to the throne. When the famine hit, Joseph's brothers came to buy grain. They didn't recognize him, but he knew them. After testing their character, Joseph revealed himself with tears. What you meant for evil, God meant for good. He forgave them. Jacob and the entire family, 70 souls, moved to Egypt, where they flourished for 4 centuries. But a new Pharaoh arose who didn't know Joseph. He saw the multiplying Israelites as a threat. He enslaved them, forcing them to build cities. When that didn't curb their growth, he ordered every Hebrew baby boy drowned in the Nile. One mother hid her son for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she set him adrift in a papyrus basket. Pharaoh's daughter found the baby, named him Moses, drawn from the water, and raised him in the palace. But Moses knew his roots. At 40, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew and killed him. He fled to the desert, becoming a shepherd for 40 more years. Then, at a burning bush that wasn't consumed, God spoke, "Take off your sandals. You are standing on holy ground." God had heard the cry of his people. He was sending Moses to confront Pharaoh. Moses was terrified. He stuttered. He made excuses. But God promised to go with him. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh. "Let my people go." Pharaoh scoffed. "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" He increased the workload. Then the plagues began. Blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock, death, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness. Each time, Pharaoh hardened his heart. Finally, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. God provided a way out. Each family was to slaughter a perfect lamb and paint the blood on their doorframes. That night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Wherever he saw the blood, he passed over that house. There was wailing in every Egyptian home, but silence and safety in Goshen. Pharaoh finally screamed, "Go!" 2 million Israelites left Egypt in the dead of night. But God didn't lead them the short way. He led them toward the Red Sea. Pharaoh changed his mind again and chased them with his entire army. Trapped between the sea and the chariots, the people panicked. Moses raised his staff. An east wind blew all night, parting the waters into 2 towering walls. The Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. When the Egyptians followed, Moses stretched out his hand, and the walls collapsed. Not one Egyptian survived. The people sang a song of triumph, but the desert was brutal. 3 days without water, they found bitter springs. Hungry, they complained. God rained down manna, bread from heaven, and sent quail. When they were thirsty at Rephidim, Moses struck a rock, and water gushed out. 3 months to the day, they arrived at Mount Sinai. The mountain trembled. Smoke billowed. A trumpet blast grew louder and louder. God descended in fire and spoke the 10 commandments. Worship no other gods. Don't murder. Don't steal. Honor your parents. But while Moses was on the mountain for 40 days, the people grew restless. They melted their gold jewelry and built a calf. They danced around the idol, calling it their god. God was furious. Moses pleaded for the people, then descended. Seeing the orgy, he smashed the stone tablets. He ground the calf into powder, mixed it with water, and made the Israelites drink it. 3,000 died that day by the sword of the Levites. Despite the sin, God agreed to lead them. He gave Moses new tablets. They marched to the border of Canaan. Moses sent 12 spies. Would they trust the giants they could see or the God they couldn't? 10 spies saw fortified cities and descendants of Anak, giants. They said, "We are like grasshoppers." Only Joshua and Caleb trusted God. The people believed the bad report. They wept and wanted to return to Egypt. God sentenced that generation to wander 40 years in the desert until they died. Only Joshua and Caleb would enter. For 4 decades they wandered. Moses made a crucial mistake at Meribah. God told him to speak to a rock. Instead, he struck it twice in anger. Because of this, Moses was forbidden from entering the Promised Land. After delivering his final speeches, the book of Deuteronomy, Moses climbed Mount Nebo. He saw the land flowing with milk and honey, then died. God buried him in a secret grave. Joshua took command. The first obstacle was Jericho. The walls were massive. God's battle plan was absurd. March silently for 6 days, then on the 7th day, march 7 times, blow trumpets, and shout. They obeyed. The walls collapsed flat. They destroyed the city, sparing only Rahab the prostitute who had hidden the spies. But then, a man named Achan took plunder he wasn't supposed to. Israel lost the next battle at Ai. After purging the sin, they conquered the land. The sun stood still for Joshua. They divided the territory among the 12 tribes. After Joshua died, a dark cycle began. The people did evil. God sent an oppressor. They cried out. God raised a judge. Judge after judge. Ehud, the left-handed assassin. Deborah, the prophetess. Gideon, who defeated thousands with 300 men and torches. And Samson, the strong man with a fatal weakness for Delilah. Samson brought the house down, literally, killing more Philistines in his death than in his life. The era ended with Samuel, the last judge. The people demanded a king like the other nations. God gave them Saul, a tall, handsome disaster. Then came David, a teenage shepherd with 5 smooth stones. He killed Goliath when the army cowered. David became a warrior poet, a man after God's own heart. But he fell hard, adultery with Bathsheba and the murder of her husband. The consequences tore his family apart. Yet, he repented. God promised that the Messiah would come from David's line. His son Solomon asked for wisdom, not wealth. God made him the wisest and richest king on earth. He built the glorious temple in Jerusalem. But Solomon's foreign wives turned his heart to idols. The kingdom split. Israel, the north, went wicked immediately. Judah, the south, had a mix of good and evil kings. Prophets like Elijah and Elisha performed miracles. Elijah challenged 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Fire fell from heaven, but even Elijah got depressed and ran from Jezebel. Eventually, the northern kingdom fell to Assyria. They were scattered, lost to history. Judah held on longer, but fell to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar burned the temple to the ground. The people were exiled for 70 years. By the rivers of Babylon, they sat and wept. But God wasn't finished. Daniel survived the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked in a furnace with a 4th figure. The Persians conquered Babylon, and King Cyrus let the Jews go home. They rebuilt the temple, though it was a shadow of the former glory. They rebuilt the walls under Nehemiah's leadership. For 400 years, God was silent. Then, a virgin named Mary received a visitor. "Greetings, favored one. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus." Joseph, confused, was told in a dream, "He will save his people from their sins." Jesus was born in a stable in Bethlehem. Shepherds saw the heavenly host. Wise men followed a star. He grew up, was baptized by John in the Jordan, and the heavens opened. "This is my beloved Son." For 3 years, Jesus walked the earth. He turned water to wine. He healed the blind and the leper. He fed 5,000 with a boy's lunch. He walked on water. He raised Lazarus from the dead. He spoke in parables about a prodigal son and a good Samaritan. The religious leaders hated him. They arrested him at night. Peter denied him 3 times. Jesus stood before Pilate. The crowd chanted, "Crucify him." He was beaten, flayed, and crowned with thorns. They nailed him to a cross. Between 2 thieves he prayed, "Father, forgive them." The sky went black. He cried out, "It is finished," and died. A Roman soldier pierced his side. His body was placed in a borrowed tomb. A stone sealed the entrance. Sunday morning, the stone was rolled away. An angel said, "He is not here. He has risen." Jesus appeared to Mary, to the disciples, to over 500 people. He ate fish with them. He proved death had lost. 40 days later, he ascended to heaven. He promised the Holy Spirit. On Pentecost, the Spirit came like a rushing wind and tongues of fire. Peter preached, and 3,000 were saved. The church exploded. A persecutor named Saul met Jesus on the road to Damascus. He became Paul, the greatest missionary. He wrote letters, Romans and Corinthians, that form the backbone of Christian theology. Persecution raged. Nero burned Christians as torches. Peter was crucified upside down. Paul was beheaded. But the blood of the martyrs was the seed of the church. Finally, the old apostle John, exiled on Patmos, saw the end. He saw a dragon, a beast, and the number 666. He saw angels pouring out bowls of wrath. He saw a rider on a white horse named Faithful and True. Then, John saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old order of things passed away. He saw the holy city, Jerusalem, descending like a bride. God will dwell with his people. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, mourning, crying, or pain. The river of the water of life flows through the city. The tree of life yields fruit every month. The end of the story is better than the beginning. Jesus says, "I am coming soon." The Spirit and the bride say, "Come." If you are thirsty, come. Take the free gift of the water of life. From the dust of creation to the gold of the New Jerusalem, this is the story that defines history. And you are invited to be part of it. If this journey through the scriptures stirred your heart, make sure to like this video for more deep dives into the ancient text. Until next time, may you walk in the light.